Hi, Denise.
There it is. Hi.
Mean to startle you. How are you?
Good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm good. I've been dreaming about that lunch we had because that place was so delicious.
Oh, Nash. I think it
Gosh,
was, yeah, Nash.
really good.
I actually found some Marion berry jam, and I with the idea to attempt to make that lemonade that they
Yes.
serve.
You
I
haven't
was,
tried it yet.
no, I haven't tried it. Okay, got
We're
it.
live, actually, Denise now and Kevin. Hi, Kevin. It's good to see
Hello.
you.
Hi, Kevin.
And so
Hi,
we
Denise.
are live. Yep, we are live to the public.
Got it.
Okay.
You ran a little late last time, so I haven't heard from him. We could probably get started and record it so that they
Yeah,
want to watch
without
the
that,
beginning. We could,
Give us the Zoom link.
he should, yeah. They all got panelist links.
So in the interest of time, and I wonder if Cheerful Maybe is going to be making it today.
And he said anything else, I would not make it.
He would not make it. Okay, so it looks like it's the folks who are here on the call right now. And Zach Mulholland may join us, but what we will do is make sure that he gets the information. So I want to welcome you all again to this second session. It's the focus of this one is on shared governance and policies and at the board level. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mike Blade. I think all of you have met Mike Blade. Michael Blade is our general counsel. He's been here for a few years at Lane Community College and is really a fantastic member of the team. So Mike.
All right. Yeah, so I presented when we were in this meeting a month and a half ago about executive sessions and a couple other things, and we kind of had to run through that quickly. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of that before we get to the shared governance and board policies. But I wanted to start with something I mentioned at that meeting, and I know it was kind of chaotic at the end because we were trying to cram it all in before you all had to leave. So you all are public officials. I think you're probably aware of that, but you're kind of a special subset of public officials because you're elected public officials, and that carries with it a sort of an extra duty, right? You have a duty to your electoral constituents, the people that elected you to and keep them informed and do what they sent you here to do. And so I just want to make sure that is at the forefront of your mind when you're thinking about what you're doing. You do have a duty to them as well, and probably to keep them informed. I realize that this isn't, it's not like a legislator or a governor who really has to be on their toes with respect to keeping their constituents informed, and you may not have a lot of folks banging your doors down to find out what's going on here, but you probably have some. And that's kind of an extra duty that you have as a public official, an elected public official. But I wanted to kind of get started with this sort of idea of rights and responsibilities as a board member. Some of these are sort of legal based, and some of them are just more for making the board run more smoothly. And I think the most important one is the very first one. This is not my list, by the way. This is the Oregon OSBA list. The first one, though, understanding that the board sets the standards for the school system. Well, it says school system because this includes K through 12 boards. In our case, though, the college through board policy. So luckily, you two haven't had to sit through 3 years of going over each and every one of those OCCA board policies. You're coming in when that's almost done. So that's a good thing. But all those policies that have been enacted by your predecessors, and some of whom are still on the board, set the policy for the institution, and that is what is sort of that 35,000 foot level guiding group of policies that we at LCC live by. And along with that, sort of the corollary to that is the second one, understanding that board members are not day-to-day managers of the college operations. You have one employee, and that's President Bolger, and any successor to the president, basically. And that person you delegate through the board policies, you delegate the authority to manage the day-to-day operations of the college. So that's really not your role as a board member. You make decisions as a team. It's majority rules, and but that doesn't limit the debate, right? I mean, it should be a robust debate, especially there aren't a ton of issues that we have a lot of disharmony, but when you do, it should be a robust debate to get to the best decision. But once you make them, they're made as a team. The next one's really important to understand. And this kind of goes back to your situation as an elected official, and that is you don't commit the board to any action, and you also don't comment as if you're representing the entire board. You're an individual board member, so you need to make sure that when you're making a statement about something that you're only stating it as an individual board member. The chair of the board has the authority to speak on behalf of the board, although that person also, can't say something that isn't true, but that is the person that is given the responsibility to speak sort of on behalf of the board. And by the way, jump in with questions if anything doesn't make sense or you want to just ask a question. The next one is super important as well. Respect the right of other board members to have opinions and ideas that differ. And these last two, that one and the final one, which is majority votes and support by all board members. Those are the ones where, and I've been a lawyer for a long time, been advisors to a lot of different boards, both public and private. And those are two of the ones where I see boards go off the rails more often than not. It becomes personal rather than about the issues. It becomes about the person, and people get hurt feelings, and it starts to fracture relationships between folks. So just remember, this is about the college. It's about the issues. It's not about the person. People are going to have different opinions. Respectful disagreement is fine. Personal attacks, not so much. Next slide. You want to make sure you have all the facts, right? And one thing you're going to get at Lane Community College is a lot of different facts coming at you. So being able to weed through what's facts and what's fiction and what's and maybe where the where the passions lie and where the biases are of the people presenting those facts is going to be very important. So you're going to want to make sure that you're getting all the facts and figures and weighing the truthfulness. And I'm not saying that somebody's lying to you on purpose. I'm just saying weighing, whether you believe this to be the actual situation or not before you make decisions. Understanding the chain of command is super important. Dr. Bolger is not going to be able to do her job effectively if she doesn't know what's going on. And so one thing that board members sometimes get sideways on is they start talking to other people, right? They'll just call me, or they'll call Brad, or they'll call a faculty member, or they'll email somebody. And then suddenly Dr. Bolger doesn't know what's happening, and people are responding and providing information that perhaps isn't true, not because they're not because they're purposefully doing it, although I guess that's a possibility. It's usually because they don't know all the facts, right? So you want to go through the proper chain of command, and that almost always, I'll give you an example of when it might not be true, but it's almost always to go directly to Dr. Bolger or the president at the time, and that person will then go to the proper people. The one time that might not be the case is if the issue is with something the president has done, right? So if you believe the president has violated, and our president would never do this, but you believe the president has done something illegal or unethical or something like that, it may be that you need to come talk to me first prior to going to the president. So that would be the one limited exception to that I can imagine coming up, not in this instance, but just as a hypothetical. You're subject to public meetings law. So if 5 of you are at an event and you're talking about your kids, that's fine. You're talking about the vacation you just got back from, that's great. But if you're talking about you know, hey, what do you guys think of this new respiratory therapy program at Lane? You know, that's going to be it's going to be controversial. What do you think we should, you know, what are the issues? And that's, you know, no good. We need to have that in the open air, subject to public meetings law, so that people can hear what you're saying.
Just to add to public meeting law, the legislature passed a law during the 23 session. It will become effective on January 1st, 2024. And it's going to require that all Board of Education members and any members who serve on the OCCA Board of Education take a training at least once during your term about Oregon public meeting law that will be offered by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. So we'll have more information on that later this year.
Great.
Okay, yeah, good to know.
Super helpful, yeah. You know, I think the next one goes sort of without saying, you know, the board and district again, because of K-12, business is ethical, honest, open, and fair with no hidden agenda. I think I suspect all of you have met all of you now. You know, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but just wanted to have that in there. You're going to get confidential information that can't be shared. A lot of this is going to come in executive sessions. But it may come out, it may come otherwise. You may see memos that I send to Dr. Bolger as part of an attorney-client privilege situation that she may forward on to you all so that you all know what's going on. Those are privileged. If you break that privilege, then we no longer have it. It becomes an open records, it becomes a document subject to open records law, and people that don't need to see it may see it. So please understand that those confidential documents and confidential information that you receive needs to remain confidential. And again, I already discussed this, but the president is your sole employee, and she needs to be present at all meetings except maybe when you're talking about her evaluation or her contract or her salary. When you're sort of deliberating on those things, those are the exceptions where keeping her out of the room makes sense and is proper. There may be times when she's unavailable for some reason, and usually when that occurs, she's going to designate somebody to be there in her place as sort of the executive in charge for that meeting. So that person would sort of sit in for her. And this goes along with hearing all the facts, but you definitely don't want to take action until the president has had a chance to weigh in. She's going to be the person that is going to sort of coalesce all the information from all the different areas and bring forth the most knowledgeable facts and ideas and recommendations. And so you're definitely going to want to hear her recommendations before taking any action. The next few we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail as we get down to ethics, but they really are related to ethics. I think the next three. So you've got basically what is conflict of interests, personal gain, and personal and family problems. You don't want to bring those into the boardroom. Those need to be left outside the boardroom. And again, we'll talk about those a little bit more here in a minute. Staff here. Most of the people here are have professional degrees, been doing this for a long time. And so, understanding that respect and consideration for them, their time, their efforts, their abilities, their experience, that's always preferred and it's always appreciated by us. I can tell you, I certainly do. And I've never had an issue with this. And I don't expect to have one, but just, it's on the list. So I want to talk about it a little bit. This one, however, goes with those other two I earlier was talking about being ones that I see fracture boards. Personal criticism of college operations, bring those to the presidents, not to the staff or the board meeting. That is the quickest way to fracture a board or fracture a cabinet or fracture a college, right? You start talking to different constituencies and criticizing different people to other folks. All of those criticisms should be brought to the president, and the president is the person that you have delegated to take care of those things, and she will handle them going forward. And again, the one exception, I guess, being that if it's a situation that the president is doing something that is a problem, that's a problem, then you come to me. And then finally, the last two, I think these are two that that Lane Community College bends over backwards far and over and above any board I've ever seen to make sure that the public has the right to be here and attend and observe board meetings. And they're informed about board decisions. And obviously you all are great about allowing them to speak, and they take full advantage of that. So there'll probably be some late nights, and that's great, because that's what the public comment period is about. So those are the rights and responsibilities. Are there any questions about those before we go on to ethics? All right, seeing none. Slide, please. So I think Dr. Bolger is going to send this whole slide deck to all, not only the three of you, but to all of the board members. I would highly encourage you to go to that link right there at the beginning, because that is the ethics guide that the state of Oregon puts out. It will answer, if it doesn't answer your question, I would be shocked, but it will answer almost all your questions. And it's a nice reference guide to have. So I would strongly encourage you to download it, at least skim it, and just take a look at what it says. But when we're talking about ethics for board members at a community college in Oregon, you're talking about four main things. You're talking about conflicts of interest or influence, the ability to influence situations for your own personal benefit. You're talking about gifts. You're talking about outside employment issues. That probably isn't, knowing all of you, all seven of you, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but on private boards, that's a big one. And maybe on some government boards where they're appointed, that can be a big one. And then finally, nepotism. And so we'll kind of hit all of those.
Like, can you mention the gift amount?
But yeah, that's coming. We'll get to it. Yeah, I'm gonna go over all four of those. I just wanted to kind of give them the highlight.
Okay.
So are you a public official? We've already talked about this. Yes, you're a public official. So you're subject to all of the public official ethics rules that the state of Oregon has, and any that are federally mandated as well. Because of that, you can be held personally responsible if you violate ethics laws. So that means they can come after you as an individual. You wouldn't be covered by necessarily covered. You might, depends on what you did. Covered by the insurance policies of the college. So what that means is, please don't violate any of these. There are some serious consequences. There can be some serious consequences if you do, not only to you as a board member, but to you as an individual and to your families and everything else. So yeah, let's not have any issues with these, and I don't expect any, but I just want to make sure that there are laws out there that can hold a board member personally responsible. The cornerstone, I think, of government ethics law in Oregon is you cannot use your official position to obtain a financial benefit or to avoid a financial penalty for you, your family, or your businesses, or anything like that, that you wouldn't have had but for your position. So that's the, really, if you think about all four that I was talking about conflict of interest, gifts, other things, they all kind of fall under that heading. Because you're a board member, if you are offered something or can avoid something just because you're a board member, that's probably a no-no. Next slide, please. So conflicts of interest, these may come up. It's fairly rare, again, in a community college, but it certainly could come up. And there's two types of conflicts of interest. There are potential conflicts of interest, and then there are actual conflicts of interest. The sites there for the ORS sections, if you think that you're in a situation where there might be a conflict, either actual or potential, please don't hesitate to go to those sites. Obviously, you can call me, or if you have a personal attorney, you can do that as well. But those numbers there are good references to see if you think that's something that you're about to get involved in. I put in that first sub category there. The way I always think about conflicts of interest, you have the potentials are the would. The potentials are the could. And the actuals are the would, right? So I potentially have a conflict of interest. I could have one, I have a conflict of interest, an actual one, I would or will have one if this happens. And so you deal with each of those slightly differently. Both of them, if you think the board is about to talk about or especially vote on something that you may have a conflict of interest or you actually do have a conflict of interest, you need to announce that. And ideally you announce it immediately rather than, you know, having them deliberate for 5 minutes and then announce it. Now, maybe you don't know, right? So, and when I say immediately, I mean as soon as you know, you would announce that. If it's a potential conflict, and let me give you an example. So let's say your brother owns a construction company and we're putting out an RFP to build a new building and your brother's construction company is going to respond to the RFP. That is a potential conflict of interest, right? Because we don't know if your brother's company is going to win the bid. So you would announce my brother's company is going to bid on this in the RFP process. And then the board may be asked to approve, you know, $20 million to build the building. You can vote on that because it's a potential conflict of interest. You could vote on that and say, yes, I want to go forward with the $20 million for the new building. But an actual conflict of interest, your brother's won the bid and now because of inflation or, you know, the pandemic or whatever, suddenly instead of 20 million, it's going to be 25 million. So you're back at the board and your brother's company is saying, hey, cost overruns, inflation, et cetera, 5 million, I need $5 million more. Now you have an actual conflict of interest, right? There's no question your brother's asking for $5 million from the community college. You have an actual conflict of interest. Again, you would announce it and you would not vote on that one. You would abstain from the vote on the actual conflict of interest situation. If you even think there might be a conflict of interest in anything that comes up during your time on the board, please call Dr. Bolger or call me, and we will let you know prior to the meeting. I can imagine a scenario where it might come up in the meeting. It wouldn't be. I don't think anybody would be upset if you called for a short recess to talk with Dr. Bolger or me about it prior to, just to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed and nobody gets sideways with this. Again, it's unlikely, I think, in this scenario at a community college, but it certainly could happen. It's much more likely if you're on if you're a builder on some sort of, state board of construction or something like that. So just please, let's err on the side of caution there. Next one, please. So this is interesting to me anyway, as a lawyer. I find it interesting that official actions, if there is a conflict of interest and official action is taken, that action is not voided by a court. I suspect that's because you generally have only one vote. Now, if it was a 4-3 and the person that voted to pass it had a conflict of interest, that would be an interesting case. But according to Oregon law, the court's not going to void that decision by the board, but the person might be facing potential, again, personal liability for the violation. You don't want to be the person facing potential personal liability. So again, let's be real careful. And again, it's, but for, oh, no, I'm sorry. So the next bullet point, ORS 244.040 section 2 provides a list of financial benefits that would not otherwise be available to public officials, but for holding the position as a public official. And these are ones that are allowed, right? That go over and above the $50 limit. And Dr. Bolger was asking about the limit on gifts, $50. So anything over $50 is a no-no. However, there are certain exceptions to that rule: expense reimbursement, honoraria, awards for professional achievement, contributions to a legal expense trust fund, and certain gifts. And again, if there's a gift out there that's over $50 and you're unsure that it falls into exception, please let me know or let Dr. Bolger know, and we will check into it and make sure it's okay before you accept it. I just don't want anybody to get in trouble with that. All right, next. All right, so again, I don't think this one's going to be as big an issue at a community college, but it's possible. So I want to bring it up. This is a situation where, using your public position to create opportunity for additional public income. This is basically using your position at a board or using the supplies or the wherewithal of the community college to benefit your private business. Again, this is a much more likely scenario in a large company or some sort of board that might have a certain industry or something that you might be on. I doubt this is going to be the case, but there are a couple of things you shouldn't do. You shouldn't use the college's supplies and facilities, et cetera, for your own private employment or business interests. You should engage in those business interests on the time that you should be doing board things, and you shouldn't use confidential information to help your business or help it avoid a negative situation. So, and that goes for relatives as well. So those are sort of the outside employment, the things that you do when you're not a board member. Don't use lanes, facilities and things like that to help your outside employment. Questions on that? That can be a little tricky. Nope. Okay. Next. All right. Then the last one is nepotism. So I don't think this is an issue. I don't think anybody here has a. Well, I don't know actually. I mean, it could be a family member, but if you do have a family member, you're not allowed to participate in any personnel actions taken by the college that would impact the paid employment of a relative or member of your household. Again, your only employee is the president, so I really don't think this is going to come into play, but just in case there's some sort of a termination situation or something like that, if it's a person that is a member of your household or a relative or something like, please let us know prior to us doing anything. And then finally, those three links there are also not as good as the first one, but those three are really good links as well. If you're wondering about something, or if you're having trouble sleeping or whatever, please feel free to take a look at those. They'll give you some guidance on things to do or not to do related to ethics as you serve on the board. Okay. All right, so we're going to move away from ethics and we're going to move to board policies. And again, you all were lucky you didn't have to sit through all of the board policies. There may be a few left, so you'll still get some of that. But the important things for you to know are sort of what are board policies. Well, they're sort of the written guidelines that you all are going to use to guide the LCC ship, right? They outline what we should be doing, should not be doing. They apply to the board, they apply to the whole college, they apply to the employees, they apply to students. Sometimes they even apply to the members of the public. So they're a pretty broad set of guidelines for how the community college is going to operate. They're also how you manage the affairs of the college. I mean, ultimately, you are the ultimate administrators of the college, right? You're the bosses. And you delegate the authority for day-to-day to the president, but you're going to provide her with guidance, right? You're going to provide presidential goals, board goals, you may have college goals. All of those things are going to be provided by you, and policies are going to outline those things. And then Dr. Bolger and her cabinet and her managers and the faculty and the classified professionals are all going to then hopefully pull together to try to achieve all of those things, or at least get as close as we possibly can. One thing that's come up in the 3 years that I've been here is kind of where do board policies fall in the sort of cascade or the waterfall of supremacy, to use a legal term. And I didn't put constitutions in here, but I'll mention those. So obviously the number one, the overarching one that no one can violate, the U.S. Constitution. Then you've got your federal laws, your federal statutes. Then you've got your federal regulations. Then you've got your state constitution. Then you got your state laws and statutes, and your state regulations. And then, and this is the important one, because I think everybody knows the ones I just went over. Then you have contractual agreements, right? So contracts that the college has entered into take precedence over board policy. So if we have contracted with a union or with an outside entity to do X, Y, and Z, and the college board policy says, do not do X, Y, and Z, we're out of luck. We have to do X, Y, and Z. After contractual agreements comes board policy. And then after that are college policies and procedures and COPs and things like that. So that's kind of where it falls. No, okay. So that has come up, and especially where board policies fit in with contractual agreements. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that board policies are subject to contractual agreements, not the other way around. So I wanted to point out some policies that sort of apply most to you. I think I mentioned in our last session that we have not renumbered yet because we're not complete with the integration of the OCCA policy library with our former policies. So we still have what I call 3-digit board policies. Those are the ones that Lane had prior to this OCCA policy crosswalk. And then we have 4-digit ones. Those are the ones that the OCCA promulgated that the board accepted. So when you see the numbers, and if you look at that last bullet point, it has BP 210, 245, 270. Those are the older ones. And if you see 1200 or 2100, those are the newer ones. Eventually, they're all going to be 4 digits. But currently, when you go into board docs, you'll see 3 digits and 4 digits. And that's what that means. But so I want to point out a few. The first one is all the 200s. That's the section of the old policies that have to do with the board. Let me back up just a second. One thing I would tell you is you should review and read all of the board policies. They're all important, right? But if you had just a short amount of time and wanted to get up to speed on the ones that are of most import to the board members, I would focus on the 200s, which are again the old board policies that relate to the board. Board policy 210 is your budget making policy, and it outlines the duties of the board with respect and their responsibilities with respect to the budget process, which is one of the most important things that the board does at Lane.
Can you remind me to find all the policies?
Yeah, so if you go into board docs, up on there's I don't know if you heard Brett, but he wanted me to remind you where you can find all the policies. You go into board docs, up on the sort of the upper right, there's a little ribbon there and it says policies. And if you click on that, it should open up sort of a cascade view on the left, and you'll have 100s through 700s and then 1000s through 7000s. And so if you click on the 100s, it'll open up all of the 100s and so on. If you ever can't find one, this is an exception. You don't need to call Dr. Bolger, although you're welcome to. Feel free to email me. I'll send you the board, Brett. We can send you the actual board policy. But 210 has to do with the budget and your responsibilities about the budget. And that, I'm not going to say the budget is the most important thing you do, but it is. It doesn't take long to get to it on the list. If it's not number 1, it's in the top 2 or 3. So that one's one that you'll want to keep track of. BP 245 regards the ending fund balance, and the ending fund balance is something that you're going to hear a lot about, I think, over the next probably 6 to 8 months. That's something that we are working very hard to replenish, and I think that's something that you should probably be familiar with and what the requirements of this board policy are. And then BP 270, which is the general fund contingency. And I think you're probably going to hear a lot about that as well and how that fits into the budget process. And so that's something you're going to want to understand as well as possible before those conversations. Slide, please. So the 300s, those are the ones that are about you all, right? The 200s are about finance and how you fit into the finances. The 300s are about the board. So I would point you to board policy 312, which is the board job description. So I think that, sort of is self-explanatory on why that's important, but that is going to set out the major things that you do. Now, it is not an exhaustive list. There's certainly things in there that you do that aren't listed there, but that's going to give you a good feel for the things that the board is responsible for. Board policy 313 is your code of ethics and standards of practice. A lot of these are going to look familiar from the things that we've talked about already, but that's probably something that you're going to want to read very carefully to make sure that you're following those things, because that'll get you sideways with your fellow board members, if not with the state or anybody else. So that's a really important one. Board policy 356 is your global executive directions. So that's basically you telling the president to make sure that what she's doing, that all the activities, decisions, organizational circumstances are lawful, prudent, and in accord with commonly accepted business and professional ethics. So that is sort of the overarching board policy telling the president, and by virtue of that, the rest of campus, hey, you need to act right. You need to be ethically solid. You need to act within accepted business and professional ethics. And that doesn't that's not a one-time thing, that's an all the time thing. And so I think that's a very important one as well. And then a couple other ones that are part of the old policies would be board policy. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I forgot 357. That's your governance and executive directions, global governance commitment, which is that's sort of the commitment that you make as board members to ensure that LCC achieves the appropriate results at the appropriate cost, and that it's advancing the vision, mission, and values that you have set forward. So that's kind of your charge to monitor the college and make sure that it's going in the right direction. Board policy 635. That is your institutional integrity global direction, which is basically, again, stating that the college will follow the highest ethical standards, et cetera, et cetera. So that is really your global charge, again, to the president and to the college, that institutional integrity is paramount at Lane, and that we will absolutely work at all times and in all areas and in all decisions with integrity and the highest ethical standards. So those are the ones of the old policies that I think are the most important, although again, all of them are important. I don't want to say that these are somehow more important than others, but those are ones that I would for sure think that it would be worth your time to read through and understand. Moving on to some of the newer policies, board policy 1200, that's the college's mission. And so I've been here 3.5 years. Brett's been here 20 plus. My 3.5 years, we've tweaked that twice. So I would be shocked if at some point in your tenure, in each of your 10 years, we won't tweak that mission again. It's not to say we won't or that we will, but I would be surprised if it doesn't come up again. So, the mission, everybody knows, I think, if you don't know what a mission is, please let me know, but I think everybody understands that. That's really the sentence or two that is what guides everything we do at Lane, right? And so the current mission is Lane is the community's college. We provide comprehensive, accessible, inclusive, quality, learning-centered educational opportunities that promote equitable student success. Lane Community College believes the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion enriches Lane Community College's mission and supports students in achieving their educational goals. So that currently is the two statements, the two sentences that drive everything we do. And so it's super important that you read that and understand it, and to the extent it needs tweaking, that you all are thoughtful and really thinking about how you want to tweak it, because that is what is always going to be at the forefront of everything we do. Board policy 2200. That's the board policy, Board of Education's duties and responsibilities. And again, I think a lot of those you'll say, oh, I'm sorry, next slide. I think you'll see a lot of those reflected in the rights and responsibilities that we went over, also in your code of conduct and things like that. So a lot of times this is, you know, you'll see repetition, but that's, I think, because it's important, not because, you know, we didn't edit that out and make it just in there one time. I think it's so important that you'll see it consistently said over and over again. But that's literally the Board of Education duties and responsibilities. And I think that's vital for all of you to review and understand. 2410 is the board policies and administrative procedures. And so that goes over what these board policies are, how they come about, and what administrative procedures are, which are basically the rules that Dr. Bolger, the cabinet, the managers, shared governance may come up with to kind of effectuate the board policies, right? Because you've got these sort of high level board policies, you've got to have the sort of down in the weeds administrative procedures to make sure that those board policies are that we can actually integrate them into the college. And so that policy talks about board policies and the interplay between them and procedures. And I think that's something that, given the last year or two, that's probably something you'll want to know. Board policy 2430. That is an incredibly important policy, and probably more so to Dr. Bolger than anybody. That's where you delegate to her the authority to manage the college, right? So this is where you say, we are in charge of the college, but we are going to delegate the day-to-day operational overview and purview to the president, who then delegates it out to all kinds of different people in different areas. But it's incredibly important for you to read that and understand exactly what that means. And so that's why this one's on there. I would strongly encourage you to read that and think about it. And if you have questions, to reach out to Dr. Bolger or me. I would also tell you that BP 2710 through 2740, those sort of codify the board policies, those ethical things we just talked about, conflicts of interest, gifts, things like that. So again, there's personal liability there that it can attach. So I would definitely encourage you to read through those, understand what you should and should not do. And again, I don't think that's going to be an issue here, but I don't want it to be. So I really would want you to look at those and understand that. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to Dr. Bolger and we'll get those answered for you. Board policy 3250 is institutional planning. And this talks about the various, what I would call the high level plans that Lane has, that you all have a lot of responsibility for, such as the strategic plan, the budget, the facilities master plan, academic plans, things like that. Those are really high level plans that are going to come in front of the board when tweaks are being made most of the time. So those are things that you should probably know, kind of where you're, you know, what you're going to be seeing and what you're going to be responsible for there. And then finally, that's the last one of those. So that's board policies. Any questions about board policies? All right. Okay, so shared governance. So this shared governance has been kind of a thorn in our side now for the last year and a half, trying to get at exactly what is shared governance. And so I kind of wanted to talk about what shared governance is, and maybe even more importantly, what shared governance is not, right? So shared governance is a structure by which everybody on campus, administrators, faculty, professional staff, the board members, students, they all kind of participate in developing some policies and in the decision-making process that affect Lane, right? So that's what shared governance is. It's an opportunity for everybody at Lane to have some say and some stake in the policies and decision-making that go on at the college. What it is not, and this is, again, I think this is more important than what it is, it's not decision-making authority. What it doesn't mean is that those councils and shared governance make decisions that are not amendable by administrators. it's a situation where you're recommending things, right? And because the president and the board, those are the folks that are going to be held accountable for putting these things into effect, right? To making them happen. And so they have to have the ability to consider these recommendations and consider these ideas and accept them and implement them or not. And so shared governance is not a situation whereby decisions are made and that's a final decision. So that is incredibly important. And if you look at board policy 325, that outlines your commitment as the board to the shared governance model and governing Lane Community College. And the most important thing, and you'll hear this quoted, or at least I've heard it quoted 3 times now by various people, and they tend to leave off the part that I've bolded and underlined, which in my opinion is the most important part of the statement. But I want to read it so that we're very clear. By Oregon statute, authority to govern Lane Community College is vested in the Board of Education. The board in turn delegates authority for the general supervision and control of the college to the college president. The president, to achieve the college ends, delegates authority to college administration and the governance system while retaining final authority over both. If you leave off that statement, it sounds as if the college administrators and the college governance system has authority delegated to them by the president to make final decisions, and that's not true. Those decisions the authority over those decisions is retained by the president. She has final authority. So that's incredibly important to remember when you're talking about shared governance decisions. Next slide. Well, this just says what I just said. It's providing the level of approval and oversight power for the very reason that the president has the delegation from the board for that power. And not only that, she's going to be evaluated by as to whether she achieved those goals. And if she's hamstrung by decisions that she didn't make, then that's not really a fair thing to evaluate her on. And so that's why she has to have the ultimate authority over what those decisions are and how they're going to be implemented. And so what does that mean at Lane? It's very simple. We've got a really great system of shared governance. We've got a college council, and then we've got 4 councils that sort of report up to the college council. You may have seen the flow chart, and it works great. And it works great when folks are incentivized to get things done, but it can work great. And the policy, the college policies and the procedures can go through that, churn through that process and come back with a recommendation to the president. And I think at Lane Community College, the chances of a president taking a recommendation from college council on a college policy or procedure and denying that completely and saying, nope, we're not going to do that at all, without having a very, very good reason, is almost 0. But let's play that out. It's not 0, right? It could happen. It's possible it could happen. I don't think Dr. Bolger would ever go there, but could another president? Sure, it could happen. If it did happen, there's still an appellate process, because you still have the opportunity to go to the board and say, hey, we did all this work and we came up with this, and here's why, and then the president just said no and didn't give us any reasons why. And the board always would have that power to say, President, we're going to do this, or President, we require you to provide your reasoning, or whatever. I mean, ultimately the president reports to the board. So there is a check and a balance on the president's authority, even though the president has the authority to veto it completely, to accept it completely, or to send it back to amend it, right? Sometimes it might come to the president will take it to cabinet and will say, this is really great, except for this one line, or except for this one thing. And the problem with that is X, Y, and Z. So we could send it back to governance and say, this is really great, except for this one sentence needs to be tweaked, and here's why. And so tweak it and get it back to us. So it can churn through that process that you'll see in the flow chart. It can churn through that process multiple times. And by doing so, the idea is that you're going to get all of that input and it's going to come out as best as it can be, right? It's going to be the best policy or procedure it can be. And if you go to that link, that's the shared governance manual here at Lane, and you'll see in that manual towards, I don't know, it's about 3/4 of the way through, you'll see that flow chart about how something might go through governance and how that works. And again, just understand that it could churn through that process, I mean, 5, 6, 7 times possibly. I mean, hopefully not. That would take quite a long time, but it could churn through there quite often. But the most important thing to take away is that it is not a final authority. The president has final authority, and then the board, and she is responsible to the board. So, yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to add that there's one of the board policies requires an annual report that comes to the board on the functioning of the governance system. And we are committed to doing that. And so we did a report in May or June, perhaps June of this year, I think it was. June of this year. If that's a report that you'd like to see, we'd certainly be happy to share that with you. And we will do that report annually so that you can see how the governance system is functioning.
All right, any questions?
That was a lot of information. So we understand that. You may need to think about your questions, and I'm just giving you a little bit of a chance to think. But you may need to think about your questions and really kind of pour over these policies and the shared governance system and the ethics requirements and all of that. If you need to do that, then please feel free to ask us questions anytime. Feel free to come to the team, the executive team. Just please let me know that you're going to them. That just really helps me out a lot. And please feel free to go to them and ask them questions as well. So I'll stop there and see if you've got, I think Brett wants to jump in and before your questions.
I was going to add one more state law that pertains to the Board of Education. It was passed by the legislature in 2021. And it basically added Board of Education members to the list of mandatory reporters in the state of Oregon. So if you ever suspect that a child has been abused, you are required by Oregon law as an individual to report that to authorities. And you can be punished pretty severely if it's found out that you knew about abuse and did not report it. So the college has a requirement to inform the board regularly. We do it about once a year, once every other year, but just so you're all aware as new board members, that's a law that pertains to you.
Gotcha.
Good to know. Thanks, Brett.
Do you have any questions? Like off the top of mind questions?
Not top of mind. I mean, obviously, it'll be important for me to dig into the policies that were noted and discussed today, and to get into a little bit more detail. But I don't have a question right now.
Okay, sounds good. We see a comment in the chat, and that's from Zach, and he says, please send the slides. And we will for sure do that. We know it's a lot of information to digest.
Yeah, I could send the slides, and they're also currently already on board docs under library, board orientation and training with the title of today's training.
Great. Thank you.
We have one more official training. If there are no other questions, I do want to just say this and then we'll check in again. There's another training that's occurring next week, is that right? And that was going to be on strategic planning. Yep. Strategic planning. And the June governance report, we'll certainly send that to you, Denise, so you can see that. The person who did that report is the former college council chair. So the college has a college council. It's a college-wide council. And the affiliated councils that Mike Blake was talking about, we have a faculty council, a student success council, a diversity, equity, and inclusion council, and that fourth one.
Infrastructure.
And the infrastructure council. Each of those councils has a chair and a vice chair. The chair is a faculty or classified professional. And the vice chair is usually one of the managers or someone from the executive team. So I am the vice chair of the college council. The chair has been the classified professional, and he is the one who actually put together the report in working with me, but putting together the report, and he actually delivered the report to the board. And you will see that as well, because I think he put his name on it. So you'll see that. Okay, any questions? Any other questions? Any other comments from our side, from the room? No?
Is there anything else in the, I see it too, chat?
I think that was Denise asking for the governance.
Oh, okay.
With the governance report?
Slides and governance, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for taking your time today, and looks like we made really good time because this is about an hour for this meeting, and so it was a lot of information. So, but thanks for your time and your attention. We'll see you.
Appreciate the work, and glad to see you back in town, President Bolger, and look forward to next week.
Absolutely. All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks.
We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.